This podcast is sponsored by SuccessDay, an HR IT consultancy firm.
Hey, I'm Quintus Willemsen, and you're listening to Meet the Mavericks, the HR tech podcast.
Hi, I'm Anne Jake, and this is Meet the Mavericks, an HR tech podcast by SuccessDay. In this series, we interview CEOs and founders of new, innovative HR tech solutions. We get to know what drives them and what their products or services are all about. Hopefully, this podcast brings inspiration to the HR community, celebrates entrepreneurial mavericks, and closes the gap between HR and tech. In this week's episode, we're joined by Quintus Willemsen, founder of Share Council, a platform that helps small to medium companies turn their employees into co-owners. Share Council creates employee participation plans, share employee ownership, and help manage their shareholders online. Companies that work with Share Council are, among others, Tony Chocolonely, MyWheels, and Bunkbank. Welcome to the studio, Quintus.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm so happy that you're here. I'm very excited. When I learned about your product, I thought, I have to invite him. I want to learn a lot more about what you do and what your product is all about. But first of all, I mean, every founder is a little bit shy talking about themselves. But I believe that a lot of the success of any company kind of comes from its original founder. So I'm curious, looking at the success of your company today, what has been your success formula?
Yeah, well, thank you, first of all. And it does make me blush a bit to being so much in the spotlight in this case. So thank you very much for the nice words. And yeah, if I look at my success formula, my personal success formula, I would describe it probably as it's going to sound pretty corny, accepting everybody for who they are and the talent that they have. For whatever person walks into the room, whatever kind of background, whatever kind of education, whatever kind of person it is, accept them for who they are. And I believe that if you do that widely enough, that you eventually end up with success. I think a lot of things are broken by preset opinions and such.
And belief systems and so on. So tell me a bit about your background then.
Well, I was born in Groningen. I grew up in Haarlem, and I was raised by parents who are very well educated, but also very free-spirited and very welcoming to anybody. And I think that's a big part of my background, what I got from my parents.
And what family do you have today?
Yeah, good question. I'm married to an American wife. I lived in the United States for a while. We have 4 children together. We live in Haarlem. At home we have a big, how do you say, almost a kid farm.
I wanted to say, I know a little bit what that's all about, but were they all born in the US or were they born in the Netherlands?
No. So I have 2 bonus kids, 2 teenagers, lovely daughters, 16 and 17 years old, and my wife and I have 2 children together of 2 and 4 years old.
Wow,
a daughter
so
and
you're
a boy.
Fully in it.
Yes, we're fully in it. We have a dog as well, so it's all mayhem.
So besides having such an extremely busy home life, I'm sure, you're also running a business.
Try to.
So I'm very curious to learn a little bit more about it, because my interest was immediately raised when I learned a little bit about your company. So first of all, we're talking about Share Council.
Yes.
And I would love to learn a little bit more about what is it that you guys exactly do. A little bit more information for the listeners so we get some context.
Yeah, Share Council is a platform to make employees co-owner of the business. That's basically it. That's what we focus on. Although you can do that in a lot of different ways. I won't explain every part right now, but could do that later if you'd like. The main focus is how do you attach the ownership of that employee as much as possible as you can to the company.
So what is a co-owner? Do they get to decide what direction you're going to take as a management team, or do they just participate financially?
Yeah, good question. It could go any way. Basically, the line here, it's a gray area, but basically the line is you can make someone completely co-owner as well with voting rights, with full influence and with financial rights, everything to it. And you can go all the way to the other side and say, okay, someone can borrow some money to the company and get a fixed interest on it. The reason you go from one end to the other, the scale that you go over, is how much engagement would you want to have out of that employee? And everybody can probably imagine that the more you make someone true co-owner, not only financially, but also maybe in part of the governance model, the more engaged they are.
So is this more a product that would fit for startups or scale-ups? Or where should I see this? What type of company is interested in your product?
Yeah, interestingly enough, we have very few startups as clients. This part of our product would work for that. Startups mostly look for ways to make employees co-owner as an exchange for their part of their salary. So the startup doesn't have enough money. They don't have enough liquidity, so they'll pay in equity. Fine, that works. The problem with that startup is that they often also can't pay us as a platform. So
good point.
They often don't become our clients. No, the vast majority of our clients is small, medium-sized enterprises. So anything what I call is the middle of the SMEs. Any company between, they start on 5 employees already, but most of our companies are between 10 and 150 employees. And making them co-owner, really focused on employee engagement, on keeping them on board, keeping them close to the company, and giving them an extra motivation to make that company grow.
So more or less the reason for companies to actually utilize a share council is that the original idea is to have their employees participate because they want more engagement or more buy-in, more commitment, something along that line.
Yeah.
And previously, how would they have set this up before your product hit the market? How did they have to do it?
Well, yeah, that's previously you would have gone to your experts, so-called experts, go to your accountant, go to your notary, go to your legal advisor, and ask them, hey, I want to make my employees co-owner. Can you help me? What can I do? And can you give me a proposal?
Is it a really progressive idea from a leadership team to offer co-ownership, or is that something that you see as very common and people are just frustrated by the administrative process around it?
I expected in around 2008 already that this would have been common use, because it exists already for decennia, for around 45 to 50 years. But still until today, it's not as common as I would have hoped it to be.
So are you almost like an evangelist as well,
yes,
to kind of get people to set this up for their teams?
Very much so. And we're more than evangelists just to set this up for your teams. But that maybe dives more in the reason why we started this company at all.
Good one. Well, tell us about that.
My original reason to make a company out of this was I want to do something about the capital divide in Europe. 64% of the capital is in hands of 10% of the population. In 2015, I figured out how needlessly difficult it is to make someone co-owner, because I also own a software development company and I wanted to make everybody co-owner, and just ran into it. It's the daunting task you get to do this. And I all of a sudden understood that if it's so difficult to make someone co-owner, it's no wonder that there's only a happy few individuals that own the economy, so to speak. So I thought, what if we would make every SME employee in Europe co-owner of the business they work for? 137 million people, co-owner of almost 80% of the European economy. Might that make a difference? That's what we're working on.
So was it originally from a purpose perspective, or did you see an opportunity to own a buck?
Purpose perspective. This was because I already had a company. I was already doing work, and yeah, as you might have recognized how much work it is to set up a company.
Absolutely.
It's like I won't compare it to giving birth to a child, because I've seen my wife do that multiple times, and that's way harder than setting up a company. But it comes very close to it. So this was after reading the book of Thomas Piketty, Capital in the 21st Century, and just figuring out how super unfair our society is put together, and realizing myself, somewhere in 2014, that I was one of the lucky ones, on the lucky side of the medallion. Later on, Joris Luijendijk wrote the book, the 7 check marks. I'm in that 7 checkmark list. And I thought, well, if I have those check marks, I got to F it up big time where I really screw up my own life. Mm-hmm. So why not spend the rest of my life trying to help others to get a bit further? Because I'm fine. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to go anywhere.
So when we, first of all, that's a fabulous way of looking upon things. So I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
Well done. But then you go into the other challenges, not only setting up the business, is also to getting people to understand how it can benefit their business or their bottom line. Often it's about that, getting a little bit to convince other parties of putting time and effort into this. I assume, I'm not sure, hopefully you're going to be able to tell me what are the biggest arguments that companies come up with not to do it.
Yes.
But I assume one of them might be, what is the return on investment, or are they offsetting it against a bonus or another type of incentive? Or what are the biggest arguments not to do it? In general, not even using share council, but just making people co-owner.
Yeah, it's actually a really good point, or an interesting point, because what we mainly see with companies that become our clients, mm-hmm. and of course, those are already become our clients, right? They're already convinced that they want to do mm-hmm. this. They see as the counter arguments of why not to do it, that it's too cumbersome, that it's too draining on their resources, that it might be too expensive to implement this, and expensive on the sense of not just running a platform like we have and paying the platform, but really, if you want to make an employee co-owner, you want to give them a share, it's the same as giving salary. So mm-hmm. you got to pay the taxes over that. Mm-hmm. So it can become pretty expensive. Those are the things, the counter arguments that have been given mm-hmm. so far, where the argument of, hey, is this indeed pushing down on our costs too much? Or is it actually, does it have to go instead of a bonus or instead of anything else? That mostly is just a perk. Mm-hmm. If there's already a bonus, the perk is that it's super easy to implement this because you won't have, you don't necessarily have extra costs. You can leverage the both of them out.
So it's more the administrative part that people find a real challenge. They think.
And just the mere understanding of the concept. Mm-hmm. And that is, it's not rocket science to make someone co-owner. You can do it. You can either make someone true co-owner or not true co-owner, but it looks like it, or you can do loans. That's it. And that's throughout Europe. It's the same throughout Europe.
Yeah, but I have to say, to be honest, Quintus, I was watching in preparation of the podcast, I was watching some of your videos and you're trying to explain to people how this all works. And being a previous HR director myself, I was trying to get my head in your space. Like, how does that actually work and how does it fit into the landscape and how does it work into integrating it into IT or into finance? So it is a little bit potentially daunting for some people to actually understand where to get started.
Yeah. And that's what I meant by it's not rocket science, as in it is understandable, but it's a lot of information at the same time and a lot of decisions at the same time you often need to take or need to make, which makes it indeed a daunting task to execute. And that's what we're trying to do. That's what we are trying to leverage. How can we take away those decision moments?
So if you could potentially help me and some of the listener to put it as simple as you could at what are the options? How does it work? So making somebody co-owner, but what does that mean? What happens?
Well, to make it as simple as possible, as I said, there are 3 groups of forms of co-ownership. And mm-hmm. each group has 2 forms. Mm-hmm. You have the group of true co-ownership. Mm-hmm. That's really what we mean by that is that even the tax authorities agree, okay, this employee owns this business, co-owns this business, which for the employee from a tax perspective means that their ownership is in box 3. Mm-hmm. There you have depository receipts. In Dutch we call them certificaten van aandelen, depository receipts of shares, or economic ownership rights. Those are the 2. And you can sell those on our platform.
To who?
To an employee. So the company would sell that to an employee, which also means the employee actually has to pay for it, buys a share of the company.
And by the way, when you say employee, does that also incorporate, I don't know, freelancers or temporary employees? Or Yeah. Okay.
I do have to say our platform is used in an even wider variety of potential participants, you would then call them, which indeed goes to an employee and a subcontractor.
Yeah.
But it even goes to being a client, making your clients co-owners, making your suppliers co-owners, having investors coming in. So it's a way wider range of what the platform is used for nowadays.
But you have to buy them. Sorry, I got you distracted. So category 1, you have to buy.
Category 1,
something.
True ownership. You really are co-owner financially of the business, and theoretically, potentially, you could also be have voting rights. Happens few and far in between, but it could.
Yeah.
Then the second one is not true ownership, but it looks like it, which is often an option to buy a share in the future. We call it options. A lot used in startup world. Or stock appreciation rights or virtual shares. Options is nothing more than we agree that in the future you can buy a share for a price that we decide on today. And a stock appreciation rights is nothing more than, okay, we pretend as if you are a share owner. We pretend as if you have, 10 shares. You don't have them, you will never have them. But whenever we sell the company, we pretend as if you have 10 shares and we'll get some money to you as well.
Yeah, okay.
Paid out as salary or as a bonus. And then the third option, third possibility, third group is convertible loan agreements or bonds. And a convertible loan agreement will say, okay, you give money to the company, and the company says at a certain moment you're allowed to convert that value into shares. Or a bond, which is also a loan, but then often for a way longer extent of time with a fixed interest rate coming back and is not paid off until the end of the time. Research that is done by universities in the US and here in Europe. Our main source of income is the European Federation of Employee Participation. And you can find a lot of research on this subject, on the results of it, on the engagement results of it.
And are we different in the Netherlands than in any of the other European countries when it comes to this? I'm sure that we have different taxation systems and so on, but are we following a trend? Are we trend setting?
The Netherlands in this case is definitely more following a trend than trend setting. Is definitely behind on, for instance, France, or I would even argue Spain, but mainly on France, and very far behind on the United States.
So did you get this idea while you were living in the States? I know that you told me that you got it while you were running your other business, but was it inspired by your experiences there?
No, maybe that's a better. I at a certain moment I worked for corporates in Dutch corporate companies, and in 2014 I started my own company, and at that moment I made the very conscious choice to start a social enterprise. I said, from this moment on, I'm only going to work on social enterprises, which for me means a company that tries to improve something in society, and that idea came from way before. On the starting off my university times, I read a few articles from Ricardo Semler, seeing the maverick word here, the Brazilian entrepreneur who's fairly well known for really trying to do things different and really trying to optimize the situation an employee is in. And I was always so taken by it, and tried to implement those ideas of Ricardo Semler wherever I would work, and would always realize, okay, it's not going to be happening.
Yeah, and for those of you that might not have heard of Semler, he gives a lot of different opportunities how to lead teams in a different way.
Exactly.
And I think, Quintus, you picked out especially the reward piece of having people benefit from the common effort. I
picked out the one that he, to my opinion, more or less forgot to implement. So,
did you write him a note?
If I had his address, I would. But no, in his last interview done by the VPRO, he actually says it's interesting how well the Netherlands is pre-aligned for implementing things as I am doing, as we now call the SEMCO methodology. That was in 2012 or so that he said that, and I thought, yeah, I think you're right. I think you can let employees decide on what they do, when they do it, how they do it. But I think you also should let them decide on how much they earn. And if you do that, you got to make them co-owner.
Do you have any idea, on average, when people join your platform, how much payout they have been getting as a co-owner?
And by that you mean payout on the shares?
On the exit, either when they exited themselves, the company, or I assume that they were then a good leaver, so to say.
Yeah.
Or when the company itself
was sold. Yeah. I do have to say we started in 2017, but really didn't go running with the platform with more clients until 2019. So our history is not that big that we have that many companies that were sold.
Okay.
I do have to say there are indeed definitely wallets, as I would call them, that have generated a very vast amount of value. And also people indeed stepping out of the company again and really bringing home a very good bonus, you would call it. Yeah.
So you're chipping away at least on your purpose. So it's having some effect.
Yeah, we measure it on a very big scale. What we do is we measure how many employees are on our platform and what is the value owned by these people. And
what is that?
Yeah, right now it's 520 million, so $500 million, owned by just under 10,000 people.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
Super. Yeah. So as you want to, share the love, I assume, with lots of other companies, what is your plan or what is your vision? How are you going to grow your current base?
Very good question. So growing the base itself right now mainly happens organically. We do a lot of organic growth, and that is very well happening here in the Netherlands. But the bigger plan for Share Council is to have a European coverage. That is not just a plan, that's the goal. European coverage. We want to be able to apply our mission, or actually win our mission, so to speak, which would mean that we would try to, in some way, do this for all of Europe.
Okay. And when you contact, in whatever shape or form, a company to pitch this idea, do you ever have to do this via the HR line, or do you get into the business via the CEO or the CFO? Who's your point of contact within the company?
Differs very much depending on how big the company is. If you look at the just over 150 clients we have, the vast majority of that is clients between 10 and 25 employees. With 10 employees, the vast majority of times we're speaking to the owner, the founder, up until 25 even still. At 25, we often see that it's the CFO who then chips in. And sometimes there's an HR manager who goes along in it and does some executional work. But what we do, the vast majority of times, it's with the CEO or with the founder in that case.
And how fast can you set it up? So from the moment that you decide, I want to make my employees a co-owner, and you've agreed, I assume, on category 1, 2, or 3, or the 6 different options, how fast does it then go, or how does the process go?
Yeah. So theoretically, we can go as fast as setting it up within an hour, and you're up and running. Theoretically, as long as it's not something we need a notary for. And the notary is only needed in one example, and that is when you want to have your shares being held by a foundation, and the foundation gives out depository receipts. Then you need a notary to set up the foundation, and we guide you in that. But the process itself is we first guide you in the choice, okay, which one of those 6 do you need? Or maybe you need a combination, a hybrid model, which the vast majority of our clients has a hybrid model.
Yeah.
Then we decide together with you, okay, what are going to be the rules around this? When can someone participate? When do they need to step out? What's the good leaver? What's the bad leaver? All those kind of things. Then we set up the whole legal structure. together with you. And then we implement it all on our platform. And then we basically take the side wheels off and you can go yourself.
Great.
Yeah.
Cool. So there's also some people that definitely want to know how you build the platform itself. Now, I'm not a techie. Well, I always ask this question. Did you build it yourself? Did you employ people? Where were they based? How did it go? Can you tell us a little bit about the tech journey?
Yeah. Well, I started out for this platform for ourselves because I already had a software development company. And we said, okay, it's going to be difficult to make someone co-owner. Can't we just make something, a little platform for ourselves to get this up and running? So
you utilize your other business for
We did
it.
that with our own development team. Yeah.
And was your own development team based in the Netherlands or did you have a diverse team?
When we started, it was all based in the Netherlands. Then we slowly but surely outsourced more. And up until very shortly ago, we had still the vast majority in the Netherlands and a small part outsourced. And we flipped that coin. Mainly, for a bunch of reasons. One is we build a pretty big and good, vast platform where there's mainly a lot of maintenance needed and some feature requests that need to be put in. And it's just a cash game.
But I can also, I don't know how integrated the platform is into the IT infrastructure of your client. But what about the security and all of that? Where is it? Where does it sit?
So our platform runs on a blockchain system. It runs on Stellar. And next to that, our servers all still run in the Netherlands. And we have backups of backups. So for that part, it's doing it fine, doing its work. Security-wise, we adhere to all the security regulation that you would imagine for a GDPR-compliant platform. We still hold the main power of development in the Netherlands.
Yeah. So. Okay. Well, we're coming a little bit to the end of this podcast episode, but I want to ask you 2 or 3 more questions, final questions. One is, what is your view on the technology evolution happening at the moment, and what do you foresee in the coming 2 or 3 years, and potentially how does this interfere or not interfere with what you have set up at Share Council?
I think it's fantastic, the evolution we're going into. It's also somewhere scary, but the whole AI evolution, I think that's absolutely fantastic. With the language models already right now, they're taking away so much of the work that we need to do, the groundwork that we need to do to make sure that a client actually can get off the ground and can start trading with employees. So what I see is that whole implementation part is going to go quicker and quicker. I heard from a few people already that as soon as they were trying to find someone to help them with employee participation, they asked ChatGPT. And ChatGPT said, maybe you should go to Share Council.
I can understand that you were celebrating that night.
I'm celebrating the coming of the AI evolution, yeah.
Well, as said just before we started recording, one of the passions, one of the things I'm passionate about is closing the gap between HR and tech and actually giving smaller companies the opportunity to pitch great ideas that would benefit employees. Because like yourself, I also have a purpose. And one of the things that I'm passionate about is that great people deserve great companies to work at and deserve also great leaders to lead them. But on that note, I'm sure you also follow HR tech competitors or maybe not competitors, but other companies that might inspire you. Is there anyone that you think is worth mentioning today that has a product or a service that would fit the category Meet the Mavericks? Something that is interesting for our listeners to also check out?
Yeah, Common Easy.
Okay.
Common Easy in Utrecht.
Yeah.
They're basically an insurance.
Yeah.
They are insurance for entrepreneurs mainly, or any subcontractor for sick leave, and that they have such a beautiful model for it, where a normal insurance company, you pay your insurance fee and they just hoard all the money and they do whatever they like with it. They invest it hopefully, and then they try to increase the value. They basically made a common out of it. In Dutch, we would call it more or less een broodfonds. But then on a really big scale. And it's working fantastically. It's amazing to see how you can be well insured, how you can see where the money is going when someone else is sick and your money is used to pay for those people. And that all your savings that you have, if you leave, you take it along. It's still yours.
Quintus, we were talking about what type of customer you actually have. And you were telling me about, small to medium-sized companies. But I'm also wondering, because that's a little bit my background, I operate a lot in corporates, bigger corporates. How does it work there? Or where should they go? Or if they are interested in having their employees potentially participate as co-owners and they have a size, let's say, above 2,000 employees, what's in it for them? Where should they go? What's out there in the market today? Is it even an option for such a size company? What's your view on that?
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a bunch of questions all at the same time.
Yeah.
It definitely is an option for such a company. These were also the companies in the 90s who were the first ones to pick up this model. I don't think I can mention any corporate, decently big-sized corporate that does not have employee participation in some kind of way. Often only for top management, but little by little they're venturing out further. Our own focus is indeed, as you say, the small, medium-sized enterprises. The mere reason is that's the biggest group. We want to have an impact on as big a group as possible. It's 137 million people working for those SMEs. And big corporates, that's not even 10% of the European population.
But where do they go nowadays? Because I know that top management often participates, but I haven't heard any company yet that have co-ownership as a, working in a big corporate.
No, you mainly see the big corporates going to their house lawyers, as you probably would say. And there is a network in there. There are a few big platforms, and big in the sense of they only service corporates. The pricing is also to that. And they do that from the perspective of that law firm that offers the employee participation packages to that big corporate. What we do see in the market is a slow but sure movement of any corporate that actually has a social goal or socially engaged or has some kind of purpose-driven vehicle. They more and more tend to find parties like us.
Yeah, and I can imagine that, if you work with your comfortable lawyer's office that you've been working with for 20, 30 years, they might also not be as much innovating their services or platform.
No, what you often see, and that's the trouble in that market, is employee participation is a niche product. Nobody does this on a daily basis but us. Hence, when you're asking your household lawyer, you also always get a bit of a slanted or half answer. Not to degrade that lawyer, absolutely not. But it's not their daily task.
Yeah.
So they also need to dive into it online and find, okay, what are the ways possible right now to do this? And the main reason you would go for that is, for instance, if you are an HR responsible, and you know that your top management is going to get co-ownership, and they need to pay vast amounts of money to buy themselves in, and they're going to borrow that money from the company in very big quantities. Please do go to a specialist.
Yeah. Cool. We're going to check that out. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for coming over today and share your story.
Thank you.
I wish that your purpose actually will manifest itself shortly. And thanks for being here today, Quintus. All the best.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for listening to Meet the Mavericks, an HR tech podcast. For more information about this episode, check out the show notes. And don't forget to listen to our next episode.